In the annals of human cruelty, few names stand as stark as Rudolf Höss. As Commandant of Auschwitz, Höss oversaw the systematic murder of over 1 million men, women, and children, turning a patch of Polish countryside into the largest killing center of the Nazi regime. His story is not one of blind obedience alone, but of calculated efficiency. Höss was not merely a soldier following orders. He was an architect of industrialized death. Under his leadership, Auschwitz evolved from a detention camp into a sprawling complex designed for mass extermination, with gas chambers and crematoria running at full capacity. After the war, Höss admitted to his role without hesitation, stating plainly, "I commanded Auschwitz." His words and his lack of remorse remain chilling evidence of how far human beings can sink when ideology, power, and dehumanization intertwine. This is the story of his crimes. Rudolf Höss was born in 1901 in Baden-Baden, Germany, into a strict Catholic household. His upbringing emphasized discipline, obedience, and a rigid sense of duty, traits that would later define his career in the SS. After serving in World War I as a teenager, Höss drifted toward nationalist and extremist politics, eventually joining the Nazi Party in 1922. By the late 1930s, his loyalty and administrative skills brought him to the attention of Heinrich Himmler. In May 1940, Höss was appointed Commandant of Auschwitz, then a small detention camp in occupied Poland. His task? Expand and organize it to serve the needs of the SS. What began as a holding facility for political prisoners soon transformed into a key part of the final solution. Höss supervised construction projects, from barbed wire fences to high-capacity crematoria, shaping Auschwitz into a center for mass extermination. Under his leadership, its operations became a grim model of Nazi efficiency, where trains brought victims from across Europe and their deaths were reduced to a mechanical process. Höss was not simply a cog in the Nazi machine, he was one of its chief engineers. Auschwitz was his creation and his legacy of death. Under Rudolf Höss's command, Auschwitz became the largest and most lethal concentration and extermination camp of the Nazi regime. It was not one camp, but a vast complex. Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II-Birkenau, and Auschwitz III Monowitz. Höss's role was not passive. He personally supervised the expansion of the camp's killing capacity, introducing gas chambers that could murder thousands at a time. Initially, mobile gas vans and carbon monoxide chambers were used, but these proved slow and inefficient. Following experiments on Soviet prisoners of war, Höss authorized the use of Zyklon B, a cyanide-based pesticide, as the primary killing agent. Victims, Jews, Roma, Soviet POWs, and others deemed undesirable, were transported to Auschwitz in sealed trains. Upon arrival, SS doctors conducted selections on the ramp, sending the majority directly to their deaths. Those chosen for execution were told they were going to take showers, herded into sealed rooms disguised as bathhouses, and exposed to Zyklon B pellets dropped through vents. Within minutes, they were dead. The bodies were removed by Sonderkommando units, prisoners forced to work in the crematoria. Hair was shaved, gold teeth extracted, and personal belongings sorted for shipment to Germany. The corpses were burned in massive ovens or open-air pits when crematoria couldn't keep up. By Höss's own later admission, over 1.1 million people were killed at Auschwitz, most within hours of arrival. The scale was staggering. During peak operations in 1944, as many as 10,000 people were murdered in a single day. This was mass killing as a logistical operation, planned, scheduled, and carried out with chilling precision under Höss's watch. Rudolf Höss was not a distant administrator issuing orders from an office. He lived in a villa just outside the camp's main fence with his wife and children, close enough to see the smoke from the crematoria rising into the sky. His daily life was a disturbing blend of domestic normalcy and industrial-scale killing. Mornings might be spent inspecting camp facilities or overseeing special actions, mass gassings of prisoners, and evenings dining with his family in their well-kept garden. Höss prided himself on efficiency. He approached mass murder as a logistical challenge, constantly refining methods to speed up killings and dispose of bodies. In his memoirs, written in captivity, he recalled these decisions in cold, bureaucratic language, showing little emotional engagement with the human cost. After the war, Höss was captured by British forces in March 1946, hiding under a false identity. He was interrogated and eventually brought to testify at the Nuremberg trials. It was there that he famously declared, "I commanded Auschwitz," admitting responsibility for the murder of over 1 million people. Höss provided detailed descriptions of camp operations, from the capacity of gas chambers to the transportation logistics, leaving no doubt about his central role. His confession, given without visible remorse, remains one of the most chilling pieces of evidence from the Holocaust. To the end, Höss maintained he had simply followed orders from above. But the scale, planning, and personal oversight he exercised made him far more than an obedient soldier. He was the architect of Auschwitz. In the chaotic aftermath of Germany's surrender in May 1945, Rudolf Höss went into hiding. Using forged papers under the name Franz Lang, he worked as a farmhand near Flensburg in northern Germany. For nearly a year, he avoided capture, until British investigators, acting on intelligence from his captured wife, tracked him down in March 1946. The arrest was swift and forceful. British soldiers dragged Höss from his bed in the middle of the night. During interrogation, he initially resisted, but soon realized his identity was no longer a secret. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Höss began to talk. He was first brought to Nuremberg, where he served as a key witness during the International Military Tribunal, providing damning testimony about the Nazi extermination program. His calm, almost casual descriptions of mass murder stunned the courtroom. He admitted to overseeing the killing of over 1 million people at Auschwitz, detailing how gas chambers and crematoria were used to carry out the final solution. In May 1946, Höss was extradited to Poland to stand trial before the Polish Supreme National Tribunal in Warsaw. The trial was public, and survivors testified about the horrors they endured under his command. Höss offered no real defense, repeating that he was following orders. The verdict was inevitable. On April 2, 1947, the court found him guilty of crimes against humanity, war crimes, and genocide. He was sentenced to death by hanging, a sentence that would be carried out at the scene of his greatest crimes. On April 16, 1947, justice came full circle. Rudolf Höss was transported under heavy guard to Auschwitz, the place he had commanded with ruthless efficiency. The decision to execute him there was deliberate, both symbolic and historical. A wooden gallows had been constructed next to Crematorium 1, one of the very buildings where so many of his victims had been burned after gassing. For survivors and witnesses, the location was more than fitting. It was a stark reminder that even the most powerful perpetrators could not escape accountability. That morning, Höss was led from his cell to the scaffold. He wore a plain prison uniform, his hands bound. There was no crowd of thousands, only a select group of officials, guards, and witnesses. He showed no emotion, no visible fear, and no sign of remorse. A brief statement of his sentence was read aloud. The noose was placed around his neck. The trapdoor opened, and Höss dropped. Moments later, he was dead. His execution marked one of the most symbolic acts of post-war justice. The man who once ordered mass death from an office in Auschwitz met his own end in the shadow of its gas chambers. The execution of Rudolf Höss closed one chapter, but his legacy remains a central part of Holocaust history. His detailed post-war confessions, memoirs, and trial testimony became some of the most important primary sources for understanding how Auschwitz operated. Unlike many Nazi leaders, Höss openly described the mechanics of mass killing, from transport schedules to gas chamber capacities, providing historians with a clear, if horrifying, record. Today, Auschwitz is preserved as a museum and memorial, receiving millions of visitors each year. The site of Höss's execution, beside Crematorium 1, remains part of the grounds. It stands not only as a place where justice was carried out, but as a reminder of what justice must confront. Höss's family history did not vanish with his death. His grandson, Rainer Höss, has spoken publicly about the crimes of his grandfather, using his family's story as a warning against hatred and extremism. This openness stands in stark contrast to Rudolf Höss's own detachment from the suffering he caused. Remembering Höss is not about remembering him as a person, but about understanding how ordinary individuals can commit extraordinary evil when ideology and obedience replace humanity. His life and death remain a warning for the future. Rudolf Höss's story is a chilling reminder of how calculated cruelty can be disguised as duty. His role in Auschwitz shows the depths to which humanity can fall when morality is abandoned. The question is, how do we ensure that history's darkest lessons are never ignored or repeated?